What's going on, shoe family? Kyle here from Does Kyle Dig It, the volleyball focused shoe review channel where we take signature and performance basketball shoes and review them for the sport of volleyball. As always, I'm your host, Kyle, both a volleyball coach and a volleyball player with a very unhealthy shoe obsession. And today, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the Way of Wade Ice Blood 2 V2s. As always, if you like this type of content, please like and subscribe. Drop down in those comments below and let me know what you think about the Way of Wade Ice Blood 2 V2s. But without further ado, let's go ahead and let's get into it. Obviously, these are the second version of the Ice Blood 2s. I did not get the original Ice Blood 2s at the time because another guy that plays on my men's team, he got a pair of them, and I didn't particularly like the way that they looked, and I thought that the materials on the upper felt a little bit kind of cheap. Whereas on these new ones, there's definitely a distinct change in the upper material from these versus those. So we'll get into that at some point, but that's why I did not actually do a review for the original Way of Wade Ice Blood 2s, and I was not doing shoe reviews when the original Way of Wade Ice Bloods came out, and I don't have a pair. Maybe I'll have to try to find some at some point just, for collection purposes, but I don't think so based on how I feel about these shoes, but we're going to go ahead and we'll get into that at some point. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into that breakdown. Now, these shoes actually from Way of Wade were billed originally kind of like as D'Angelo Russell's shoe that he was going to be wearing throughout the season until obviously the new D'Lo ones just came out. If you want me to go ahead and review a pair of those, please let me know in the comments down below, because I'm not sure if I want to, if this was the shoe that he was potentially wearing prior to that and was enjoying. However, I took a look at the actual NBA statistics on these shoes, and it turns out that D'Angelo Russell actually was wearing like other shoes from Way of Wade, as opposed to actually wearing these in game. He wore these like the third most out of like the shoes that he was wearing at the time or throughout this past season. So I don't think he actually particularly maybe liked these all that much. But, who knows? That's just kind of how these were originally marketed at one point. Now, as always, let's go ahead and let's get started with that traction. Underneath, you've got what is like their tough rubber, and it's in kind of this, interesting circle kind of pattern that they've got going on. And then you've got herringbone that kind of surrounds that, and then more of the pattern on the heel with a void here in the middle of the heel. These shoes weren't great on actual traction performance. I definitely slid a little bit on these. I will say I think these are more designed for outdoor use, based on like kind of how tough and how thick the actual rubber grooves on these are. But on an actual indoor court, these things picked up dust like crazy. And once they did pick up dust, they were sliding out. I had a lot of issues when I played in these as far as traction goes, even especially on like the sport courts and everything, because of just how this traction pattern is designed. These do not perform super well in sport courts. Overall, I'd say probably like an 8 out of 10, 7.5 out of 10, somewhere in there for the traction, but just not the greatest performance out of a pair of Way of Wade shoes, unfortunately. Definitely a little bit disappointing considering how awesome pretty much every other shoe in their lineup has been for the last year and a half. But that being said about the traction, let's go ahead and let's move into that cushioning support. Now on these, we've got 75% boom foam with 25% Cloud Plus foam. It was fine. The step-in and cushioning comfort wasn't bad. It definitely had decent cushioning and everything. Nothing to write home about, nothing spectacular, but it was, it was boom foam with a little bit of Cloud Plus foam, so it's exactly what you'd expect. One thing I will say is that there was superior court feel in these shoes because of kind of that mixture of the foam and the minimal kind of feel of these shoes. You definitely felt grounded to the court and very connected. So for your, your down low positions, your setting positions, these shoes potentially could work for those, though again, I don't think I would actually recommend them, but we'll get into that again a little bit further into the video. Overall, the cushioning on these, that Cloud Plus, the Cloud Plus plus the boom foam, I would say probably like an 8.5 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Nothing great, but definitely, still Way of Wade cushioning and support, not bad, but the court feel definitely bumps the score up just a little bit over kind of what it would be diminished down to. Now, let's go ahead and we'll move on up the shoe. We'll talk about that lockdown and support. But before we actually get there, since the lockdown and support and the cushioning, this kind of relates into both of those because it's all part of this upper design moving into the lower. These shoes are narrow. I mean, I don't think I have a more narrow pair of shoes. And like I have Kobe's that might be a half a size too small. And even those don't feel as narrow as these shoes do. When I actually put my foot into these and stepped in, the way that the interior is designed right here, my foot was actually resting almost up on top of this just because of how narrow that felt. It was uncomfortable. I didn't really like it. I hated it actually. And it made these shoes pretty much unwearable for me. And I know that it wasn't a sizing issue because in the toe box, I actually had plenty of room and I didn't have any issues lengthwise with the shoe. Even if I had gone up a half a size, I don't think that it would make a difference, even a full size. But then I would have way too much room and length here up in the front and in the toe box that even if it did fix the issues with the narrowness, it would not be a wearable shoe for other reasons. So the basic thing here is that these shoes are crazy narrow. And I hated that. The way that this like little interior bit is designed here and your foot is stepping up in, it did not feel great and I hated it. That being said, the rest of the actual lockdown and support of the shoe isn't bad. As you come on up, we've got, kind of like the regular rubber, nice rounded shape here on the heel. So you do get, really good heel to toe transition on the shoe. Not bad at all. Exactly what I would expect out of a Way of Wade designed shoe. You get a little bit of that exposed boom foam here right on the side of the shoe and also underneath in that part where your foot awkwardly rests there and feels like you're kind of almost stepping on a hump inside the shoe because of how narrow they are. But the materials on the upper here are actually what is a positive about the shoe. From the actual original Ice Blood 2, the V2 here, you get a bunch of really nice material upgrades. Feels a lot more high quality. It is synthetic stuff, but at least it feels like it's going to last a lot longer than the materials that were on the original model. Now we also get the laces that originally debuted in the Way of Wade Shadow 6s and then continued into the Way of Wade Shadow 6 V2s. They also appear on these as well. I call them lockdown laces. Some people hate them. I like them because once you get them laced in, they're not going to move and they're going to stay right where you had them laced. So for me, that's a positive. For other people, that might be a negative. So if it is a negative, then there's already way too many problems with this shoe for you to even be worried about the laces. Now, that being said, as we come in the shoe, pretty much no cushioning on the tongue, but because it's this like kind of synthetic, on mine like snake skin almost, it's tough enough that when you get them laced down, it's not uncomfortable. And you do get a decent little bit of padding here in the heel for your Achilles tendon, but outside of that, there's really not a whole lot of padding inside the shoe, at least nothing substantial to talk about. So if we're putting the issues with that comfort and the step-in kind of support and the narrowness of the shoe, then lockdown and stability of the shoe is like a 5. It's terrible. My foot felt uncomfortable. You do get a nice outrigger, kind of piece here that gives you good lateral stability. But like I said, on dusty courts, that's not going to make a difference. So on dusty courts, you're going to be standing on a shoe that has you feeling like you're almost standing on the inside of a slope because of how narrow it is, plus tough rubber that is set up in not a great pattern so that on dust performance, it's pretty bad. Just overall, not a great shoe from Way of Wade. Definitely not a huge fan. And I really hope that the D-Lo 1 isn't anything like the Ice Blood 2 V2, because if it is, I'm probably going to hate that shoe. But I think I will go ahead and get a pair just to try out for everybody and kind of see how they perform. Because normally shoes from Way of Wade actually perform really well. And technically it is the first actual signature shoe for D'Angelo Russell. So we'll see how it actually performs overall. Now, one thing about these shoes is they are actually relatively lightweight. Average weight of my shoes is 12.5 ounces. These bad boys came in at like 12.75 ounces, right around there. So they are definitely lighter than standard, and you can feel that. They're lightweight shoes, and they feel light on foot. It's just the issues with that fit and comfort that really just kind of kills the shoe for me. So overall, I would say we've got traction that is kind of subpar, not super great for the impact protection, but adequate. You've got horrible traction performance on dusty courts, especially on those dusty sport courts. These are pretty much unwearable. And then when you actually move on up the shoe, you've got that horrible narrow fit with an actual, the toe box that's normal. So you can't just go up in sizes, combined with not a whole lot of cushioning and padding. Yes, you do get nice upper materials and they are lightweight shoes, but just overall kind of just subpar across the board. Really disappointing for these shoes from Way of Wade. So I do not dig these shoes overall. But if you disagree with me, please drop down in the comments. Let me know why you do like these shoes and why you have super narrow feet that actually fits into them, because I have never worn anything quite as narrow feeling as these shoes. But that'll go ahead and that'll wrap up the Way of Wade Ice Blood 2 V2s. This has been Kyle from Does Kyle Dig It, signing off.